Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so great to see you. My name is Daniel Meyer, and these are the well, they were the musicians of the Erie Philharmonic. All the strings are just getting up and leaving their seats. Well, I hope that doesn't mean they're hungry. Well, I hope we'll see them back later in the program, but don't worry. We've got some other families in the orchestra to get to know as well. And that music that you just heard was by the great Russian composer Tchaikovsky. That was from his 4th symphony, and it's a perfect symphony to use to introduce you to the members of the Philharmonic and the families of the orchestra. And I bet you already know the 4 families of the orchestra. This first family I'm thinking of makes their sound by blowing with the breath, whether it's over a hole or over a single reed or 2 reeds together. Does anybody know which family I'm thinking of? Absolutely correct, woodwind. Thank you for raising your hand. Woodwinds, I'm so glad to see you this afternoon. Welcome. I'd like to introduce the members of the woodwind family. Let's start with the flutes. There you go. Beautiful instruments. And how about the smaller cousin of the flute? It's called the piccolo. Smaller, and therefore it has a higher pitch. The longer the instrument, the lower the pitch. The shorter the instrument, the higher the pitch. How about this next instrument, the oboe? Beautiful instrument, yeah. The oboe has a longer cousin called the English horn. See how long that is compared to the oboe? And it's also got a rounded bell at the bottom to give it a slightly different sound. How about the clarinet? Single reed instrument, yeah. You probably know what a clarinet looks like. How about the bass clarinet, larger instrument? Wow, it's got a beautiful silver bell on the bottom there. And then we have some double reed instruments there called the bassoons. Yeah. And the bassoon has an even larger cousin. We don't have a live version today, but you can see it on the screen. It's called the contrabassoon. See how large that particular instrument is? Would you like to hear how the woodwinds sound together as a family? All right. This first excerpt that we're going to play for you is just a beautiful tune. It's a melody and some accompaniment. Listen to how the woodwinds sound just by themselves. And again, all this music is from Tchaikovsky's 4th Symphony. How about this next clip from the woodwinds? And this is really fast and furious notes. The woodwind family. Okay, the next family I'm thinking of is also blown with the breath, but this time you have to buzz your lips. Excuse me. Do you know? The brass family, that's right. And if you notice, the brass family is back in the right corner of the stage, and we put them all in the same area. Let's start with the French horns. Look at those beautiful instruments. See all that beautiful brass tubing? If you were to lay all of that tubing out, it would pretty much go from that end of the stage all the way to here. So they curl it up on itself so that you can fit it into one instrument and play it. How about the next instruments, the trumpets. Yeah, I like the look and the sound of the trumpets. The trumpets have pistons that you press with your fingers. How about the slide trombones? Yeah. And then the granddaddy of the brass family is the tuba. Yeah, look at the size of that. Is that heavy? No, not heavy at all. He's a strong guy. Would you like to hear how the brass sound together? Okay. Pretty impressive, right? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but they can play a lot louder and more powerful. Do you want to hear some more powerful music from the brass? That's the brass section. Now there's another family that sits along the back of the stage, and the way that you play these instruments is that you shake them, you scrape them, or you strike them. Can you think of this family? Do you know? Percussion family, that's right. And if you think about the percussion instruments, they're divided into two groups. There's the group that has a definite pitch. In other words, when you hit it, it makes a specific note. Or the ones that don't have a definite pitch and they just make a particular sound. Let's start with the ones that have definite pitch. This one's called the xylophone. The next one is played similarly, but they have little metal bars, and it's called the glockenspiel. I love the sound of the glockenspiel. Next up, we have the chimes. You know that sound, yeah. And believe it or not, the kettle drums or the timpani also have definite pitches, so he can tune his drums to whatever note he'd like. Here's the timpani. How about some of the instruments in the percussion family that don't have definite pitches, but they have really interesting sounds? Why don't we start with the snare drum? Yeah. How about the booming bass drum? And yeah. And when you crash these two metal plates together, you get the sound of the cymbals. And there's even a larger cymbal that you play with a mallet, and it makes a really neat sound. This one's called the gong. Would you like to hear the whole percussion section play together? All right. There you go. There's the percussion family. Give them all a big round of applause. Oh, I was wondering, strings, if you would ever come back. Should we give them a round of applause? Okay. Well, let's talk about the string family. We've got instruments that can play very high, all the way to medium instruments to those that can play really low. And if you take a look over on the left side of the stage, we have the violins. Raise your instruments, violins. How about the larger violas? Those are also played under the chin. Now, these next instruments are so large that you have to set them on an end pin into the floor. That's the cello. And the granddaddy of the string family, so large that you definitely have to put them on the floor. This is the double bass. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can play a stringed instrument. The first and perhaps most popular way is called arco, A-R-C-O, and that's a fancy word that essentially just means to play with the bow. You want to hear what arco sounds like? Okay. That's everyone in the string family playing with their bows, or arco. Now we have another way to play the stringed instruments, and that's with your finger. It's plucking with your finger, and that's called pizzicato.